Fear, ladies and gentlemen, often begins in the heart of childhood. It's a universal dread as old as time itself. But what happens when the night falls and the world is shrouded in darkness? Ordinary objects transform into ghastly phantasms waiting to prey upon your deepest fears. That seemingly innocuous pile of laundry on the chair? Well, that morphs into a ravenous monster, yearning to devour your dreams as you slumber. The hoodie, hanging from your door's hook, contorts into the shape of the infamous Hat Man, a spectral figure that haunts your every moment, plotting to whisk you away from all you hold dear into an eternal abyss. The toll of the dark, my friends, can be relentless, especially on young minds. Most conquer their fears as they mature, but what if that dread never wanes? What if, with the passage of time, the terror only grows, manifesting even in the stark light of day when you should be safe? It's within this eerie confluence of reality and nightmares that our tale unfurls. The haunting begins not just when the lights go out, but when the sun shines bright, and that is where our story begins. We'll see you on the inside.
I'm ready whenever you are.
Good, because I'm ready. Right. Doesn't feel like you're ready. Yeah, it didn't feel like you're ready. You said you're ready, and then I was like, I'm ready, right? And I was going to start, and then you're like...
I just moved a little bit, and my pillow, dropped.
That happens sometimes. Pillows do be like that. Anyway.
3, 2, 1.
And you're live. No. Oh, it'd be nice if we had a production crew. Anyway, welcome back to Sleep with the Lights On. My name is Scott. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and father-in-law, Christian. America's favorite wet blanket.
Not a wet blanket. We've had this discussion
That's
before.
not what the title card says. Thanks for joining us once again. What a treat.
I'm excited.
You don't sound too excited, but you told me you're tired, so I'm like, he's probably not going to be as jumpy as he usually is, as excitable as Christian usually is. You know the Christian, right? Anyway.
I've never been described as excitable.
I am aware. That was the hilarious moment within the statement, but it's fine. Honestly, we got a fun episode for you guys today. It's a doozy. Got a couple longer stories in there, so I'm not really sure how long this episode's going to run for, but
I like the little short ones.
He is a fan of little short ones. We've got a nice long one in here.
Scary.
And with that, you guys all, at this point in time, you all know where to find us on social media at Freaky Deaky Pod. Send in your stories for Sleep with the Lights On to the gang at thefreakydeaky.com, and we will add you to the list. We'll get you penciled in on an episode. All your own. Just kidding. It's going to be part of a different episode with 3 stories, unless it's a bonus story. Shout out, Christina. How you doing? Anyway, can we get into this first story? I feel like...
I've been waiting all day.
Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some of us were at work just thinking about this episode.
Okay. Yeah. Some of us were at work, Christian. Sorry. Forgot you were a working man now. Anyway, this first one is called This Haunted House. Every time I say that title, I'm reminded of This Old House. And I think was that Bob Vila?
Maybe, but I was thinking of Our House.
In the middle of the street?
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, this is from Yo Soy Soya. My childhood home was definitely haunted. I have a drawing potentially made by a ghost.
What?
Already off to a bad start with Christian. Anyway.
Why is that a bad start?
Because you're already questioning it. You're like, what?
I've never heard of a ghost.
Wow. You've never heard of a ghost? We've been doing this show for how many years?
Drawing
Christian?
A picture.
Gotcha. Anyway, that's fine. It says, I can or could feel it when there's a presence somewhere. There's a palpable sense of being watched. There's a tension and paranoia in the air that lingers and can even simmer into full-blown terror. It makes you feel very vulnerable. When I was a younger child, I remember seeing glowing red eyes hanging in the air in my dark living room. I thought our house had werewolves or vampires. There was a phase in grade 3 when glowing orbs would hang out in my room for several minutes at a time, which I interpreted as aliens. Well, what else are you going to do, you know?
That's what the TV says it is.
Exactly. My child mind was trying to make sense of things, but I definitely had a fear of the dark, specifically in our house. Most places were fine in the dark, but in our house, I always felt like I was being watched by something with malicious or, at best, neutral intentions. neutral intentions from a demon. That's got to be something fun, right? Just like, I mean, I could do something bad to you right now, but I'm just not really feeling it. I've had a long week. You understand, right?
I feel like the neutral part is the demon just giving you certain looks and just doing this sometimes
This
when you
guy's
walk by.
coming back around. Get out of my kitchen. Those are my Oreos. Anyway, paranormal things ramped up for me in high school, but to remain chronological, I had a cousin stay at our house one summer while most of us were on vacation between my 7th and 8th grades. My cousin Billy was helping my dad with various projects. One night, my cousin was going to bed in one bedroom, later dubbed the spooky room. Outside in the dark, he saw a figure leave our garage and enter our house. My dad, right? Billy, 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 help me. My cousin heard my father shouting. Billy rushed to check on my father. My father had been sleeping and was irritated by Billy's presence. Billy went back to bed only to hear it again. Billy, 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 help, help. Again, cousin Billy rushed to check on my father, who was fine and confused by Billy's urgency. Billy slept on the couch that night. I didn't learn about this until years later. A couple years later, my brother moves away to college and I move into his old bedroom, the spooky room. It's my freshman year of high school. I was always particularly creeped out by this room, but hey, new changes are often intimidating. One morning, I wake up to see a skull perfectly drawn on the dust on the window across from where my head lies when I sleep. This was the layer of dust facing the inside of the room, not the outside. No one had access to the room except me and my parents, who are not pranksters by any means. I show my mom and wipe it away. A couple weeks later, I'm studying in that bedroom. It's night and the lights are on, so the windows turn into mirrors. I look up from my bed towards that skull window, and I see in the reflection a white silhouette standing behind me. I hold my gaze for maybe 10 seconds, just trying to grasp what I'm looking at. I eventually turn my head around and see nothing. I look back at the window and see nothing in the reflection. I sleep on the couch for the next few nights. A couple more weeks later, I'm laying in bed, listening to a late-night radio show. Lights are off. Looking through that same skull window, I see a similar white silhouette outside stride past my window. I sleep on the couch for several more nights. Over the course of weeks, I see more things drawn on the dust of the windows. Generally, it's scribbles and shapes. I'm scared they might be some sort of curse or something, so I wipe them away. Not today, Satan. Get your scribbles and weird curse shapes out of here.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
That is true. Great observation. Out of curiosity, I put a sticky note on the window that says, "Please write below." Several days later, a perfect circle appears around the note. The band showed up and
That's awesome.
They're just like, what's this note doing here?
Love that band.
I bet you do. As if someone had put the base of a paint can up against the surface. This wasn't like the finger drawings I'd seen earlier, but one did really stand out. I decided to recreate it in MS Paint before I wiped it away. Beautiful. I can only imagine the level of work and craftsmanship that went into that MS Paint drawing. Oh, the memories.
I have no memories like that.
I bet you have memories of parchment at some point in your life. Maybe some charcoal drawings.
Like that. Is that the same as papyrus?
It sure is, Christian. It sure is. Over the years, I've shared this with friends, colleagues, and they mostly come to the same conclusion as I did before I tell them my interpretation. But yeah, for the majority of high school, I slept with the lights on. Attaboy. Attaboy.
This is not a paid sponsor.
Yeah, they're all like, "Hey, Scott, did you write this?" I'm like, "Oops, I did. I needed a story." Anyway, I avoided that side of the house like the plague. Little things here and there, but nothing huge. Until it's senior year of high school. I'm in the living room with my mother watching TV and the clothes dryer finishes. This dryer is directly down the hallway from the spooky room. I suck it up and head over to empty the machine, getting my usual feeling of immense dread and paranoia as I enter that side of the house. I bend over and start unloading the laundry, and my mind goes blank. I lose control of my motor functions. My arms go limp, and beyond my control, my body stands up, and I hear a masculine voice take a deep breath and hiss in my ear. I immediately regain control of my body, and I GTFO. Around that time period, my aunt comes to stay with us for a month or two. She has no idea what I've experienced there, but literally on her first day there, the bathroom door slams hard on her, and she immediately has us smudge the house to ward off whatever's there. I've experienced other paranormal things elsewhere, and I've had a couple weird experiences where I think my dead relative warned me about a couple of imminent deaths in the family, but this story is already long, so I'll end it here. Well, that's fun.
I think the brother left those images on the glass.
The brother that had moved away to college?
Yeah. It's first off, it's boys.
Classic.
So you know they didn't clean the windows when they switched over.
First of all, we don't like to judge here, Christian, all right? It's unbecoming.
I wasn't judging. I was going by statistics and experience.
Wow.
The brother, this would be a great trick to do if you're in the same situation. Just draw on the window, leave some of that oily skin matter behind, and it'll attract the dust more, and then you'll scare your little brother that got your old room.
Wow.
Months
the
later.
Spooky room, no less.
Yeah, the spooky room.
Okay, so there's that. Now, did the brother also become transparent and seize control of his brother's body while getting the laundry and hiss into his ear?
That's probably an illness, but I'd like to go back to the part.
Yes, an illness, of course.
The part where the windows turn to mirrors at night.
Yes.
And the guy saw something standing behind him and stood there looking through at these windows that are a mirror now.
Yes.
For like 10 seconds instead of freaking the hell out because something was standing behind him.
That's my immediate response if I see something. It's a reaction. What can you do? You're not just going to be like, oh, hello, spooky ghost friend. Let's have a staring contest, shall we?
Mirrors have gotten me 100 times in that same way. I don't understand.
There's something inherently creepy about mirrors, man.
Yeah, and I didn't freak out and run out of the house, but I did kind of jump each time.
Hell yeah, you did. Hell yeah.
And then laugh at myself.
Oh, yeah. I've been afraid of my own reflection many a time. Many a time, indeed.
And only a couple times the other thing laughed, too.
Yeah, I was like, ho, 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 ho. Yeah, at least has a sense of humor. Now, isn't that funny? As soon as the ant came, the first day something happened, she's like, sage everything.
Those are the ants like that are usually the ones that, the parents are kind of leery of because of their pagan or occultic ways until they get a ghost or a demon.
Occultic ways.
Once they get a ghost or a demon, they're like, come smudge this place. But you don't believe in that stuff.
I don't have to believe in it for it to work.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone calls out to Jesus in times of need, right?
Yeah. What's burning a little sage going to do other than set off the fire alarm?
Make your house smell a little earthy. But outside of that,
Some people are okay with that. Some people aren't.
That's true. That's very true.
What do you think about this story?
I don't know. It's very interesting. I enjoy it. Anytime you can get a story where someone lived in what they describe as a haunted house for the most of their life, it's just fascinating. The stories that come with that, it's because, we're so used to getting these one-off stories when I was 12, this happened. So weird, right? But I think there's something different about living in a house like that where you're having experiences constantly. There's no denying it at that point. And even a lot of skeptics that move into these houses and have crazy experiences, they say the same thing. They're like, look, I'm not someone that usually says these types of things, but I think the place was haunted. And whether or not you could ever get any actual proof of that is slim to none, but still it's fascinating all the same.
Would be, but I don't know, man. I can't see too many skeptics just changing like that.
That's what I'm saying. One-off things, you're not going to change your mind. But if it happens continuously and then it stops happening when you leave that house, you're gonna think something. You may not be a full-blown believer, but you're gonna be a little more. You'll be like, oh, maybe there's something out there. I don't know. I keep getting listings on Facebook. There's a page called really old or cheap old houses or something like that. And every time I scroll past them, I'm like, damn, that's gotta be 7-8 bedrooms and it's selling for $90,000. And every time I see one, I commented on it and I say, but it's haunted, right? It's haunted, right? There's no way it's not. But I would buy it just for the purpose of collecting data.
Haunted with the misery of previous owners.
And the misery of having to fix it up.
Ooh. If that doesn't create ghost in your minds, I don't know what will.
Creates scotes. I was wondering if people were going to see my Bigfoot socks. And then I was like, oh no, these cameras are far too cropped. And then I remembered we got a wide angle shot here. So I hope people enjoy Squatch socks. Your boy is, if anything, committed to the cause.
They smell like Squatch too.
They smell a lot worse than that, I'm willing to bet. And that's fine, Let's get into the second one. This one's interesting. I'm actually very curious to hear your opinion on this, even though I'm sure it's going to be wrong.
It's true.
Wow. Didn't even have to read it. It is called The Buried House. And it's by W. Jescott. No, it's not. Or W.J.E. Scott. I don't, whatever. You have the information, piece it together yourself.
The way it is, it's got to be W. Just Scott the third.
Wow. I grew up dirt poor in western South Dakota. The county I lived in was larger than Delaware with a population of about 30,000 people. When I was bored, which was frequently, relatable, I'd go to the library in town. Population 530. The library had a population of 530?
I think he meant the town.
Okay, gotcha. I'm like, that's a pretty hopping library, friend. Okay. I'd pick a random book and start reading. One of the books I read was a history of the area, and one of the stories dealt with my stepfather's father's, step-grandpa, I guess, property.
That is very confusing.
That is, yeah. In that, his father, step-great-grandpa, had annexed some property in the 30s during the Dust Bowl.
So he basically waited for these farmers to go out of business because their crops died and took their land.
That is what it sounds like. My grandmother was kind of well off, but easily the most evil person I've ever met. You don't really hear that too often about grandmothers.
Mm-mm.
Usually they're all about butterscotch and oatmeal cookies.
What's wrong with butterscotch?
There's nothing. That's what would make it great, actually, but it's fine. We're not here for that. I asked her about my late step-great-grandfather's annexation about a week or two later. The Millers was how she answered. No other explanation. It took me asking aunts. As an adult, I haven't figured out how to say that. As a kid, I said aunt. My aunt. I'm trying to say aunt.
I'm pretty sure you could say it either way.
Okay. I'm just going to say aunt. I'm going to go back to my roots. I'm asking my aunts, and people are like, oh, like an ant farm, Scott? No, not like an ant farm, like people that are related to you. Trauma. It took me asking aunts and uncles, but the story went that during one of the particularly horrid dust storms, a family called the Millers had abandoned their property, just left the place, and went to greener pastures in California. I asked around to where the property used to be. They mentioned it was on the southeast side of the property by some mini badland areas we called breaks. When I asked if the house and everything was still there, they said no, and that it was a waste of time. I was a curious little bastard, though, and my favorite topics were history and archaeology, so one afternoon, I went to where I thought they were talking about, a bit of a rise in the middle of otherwise completely uninteresting plains. Nothing. A couple of more weeks went by. I was probably 11 or 12, I forget. I went on a ride down that way again, dirt bike, not horse. Nobody asked. And found myself in a sort of V between some breaks. I saw what I thought was a weird pyramid of some sort and went to check it out. What it ended up being was the angle of a roof, sticking out of the ground. I went around to the far side of it and saw an attic vent. Being more curious than cautious, I pulled the framing around the vent and opened it. There was a bunch of blown dirt around, but otherwise the area was mostly intact. Not much in it, but it was an unfinished attic with one of those old school ladders halfway down, and a couple of holes going down to the rooms underneath. I glanced into one. When my eyes adjusted to the light, I'm fairly sure I saw something lying on the floor. I can't tell you what it was because I was out of there so damn fast, I outran photons. Hilarious. I rode back to my grandma's house, but there was no way on the planet I was telling that woman I went to the place, so I waited for a week and told my cousin Brad. Brad was and is slightly more intelligent than a piece of driftwood. He called BS and wanted to see. I was having none of this, but told him I'd take him there anyway, as I wasn't chicken. Oh, I'm not chicken, Brad. I'll take you to the buried house, don't you worry about that.
Famous last words to a lot of boys.
I ain't chicken. I'll lay in front of this train. Anyway, we got to where I was, where I damn well knew I was, but there wasn't a house. There wasn't a roof. There were dirt bike tracks. There were footprints, but it looked like I'd just walked around for a while in the alkali dirt. Brad gave me some BS about it, went down and told my other cousins that I'd BS'd him, blah, blah, blah. Even a couple of my aunts found out and also gave me poop. I'm trying so hard. There's so many swear words in this. I'm like, this would roll right out. They gave me poop when I told. Anyway, great storytelling, Scott.
Grief.
More of that. Grief. Beautiful. But they gave me grief. Oh, shucks. No, I swear that happened. There's been a whole lot of my life that I've added a few adjectives and adverbs to make more interesting, but all BS aside, that happened just the way I've typed it. And it still messes with me to this day. Super loud. Hella close that book on him.
This reminds me of a old Twilight Zone episode.
It does kind of have that vibe, doesn't it?
I don't know if you've seen this one, but it's the one where I think the parents are in they look like Beverly Hills, and they're fighting because they're getting ready to have a divorce, and the kids get frustrated and go jump in the pool and swim underneath the water, and then they end up in another
time.
Yeah, another time.
Picture, if you will.
Yeah.
Another time buried beneath this pool. No.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of kids and like a grandma type figure that takes care of them. Then they can stay there forever, but they choose to go back. And the parents are still fighting. But it's similar only because this guy went to this house. It was there, he says.
Yeah.
Looked inside of it. Some thing was laying on the floor, but he was a chicken and took off really fast.
Which is interesting because later on he said he wasn't a chicken.
Yeah, but if he wasn't, he would have gotten a better view of whatever that was.
Yeah.
And be able to explain it better.
Yeah. See, part of me would think, oh, just a homeless guy or something, squatting in this buried house. Quite the ride. But not being able to find the house again adds a really interesting layer to it. And not just not being able to find it, but he's like, I know this is where I was. There was dirt bike tracks there. There was like footprints that I just walked around, but the house was nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
Like that's really interesting. That is kind of like, that gives off like hella time slip vibes, I guess you could say. I mean, that's what I'm going to say. I don't know what else to call it. So, but interesting story no less.
Yeah. The only other thing I could think is he'd eaten something that might have changed the way he perceives the world, but that doesn't sound like
could
it's
that be Christian.
You yell at me for saying what it is on here.
Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, is Christian going to bring up that stuff on our YouTube channel? All that and more at 11.
Yeah, I can't imagine hallucinating.
That's a lot to hallucinate to.
But, I mean, some people come up with some pretty crazy stuff when they see things.
That is true. That does happen.
This guy rode his motorcycle up, got off of it.
Dirt bike, but yes.
Dirt bike, same thing. One's just, you know what I mean.
But
either way,
they're both equal parts annoying.
Yeah, he gets off, walks up and looks inside this attic thing of a house that's been buried by the dust from the Dust Bowl days, probably.
What an interesting find that would be, though, right? Finding a house that's like underground.
Especially I'd be making that place like a fort or something.
As long as it was like structurally sound,
I don't know, man. Have you been a kid? Half that stuff we played around in. Well, you were in a different age than me.
And I also was never a kid. I've always been this.
Clone.
I am Scott. No, that's dumb as hell. Anyway, let's get into this third story, shall we?
I would like to get into the third story.
Well, in that case, we're going to close this out. No. This is from Lock 6. And it's called The Man at the Front Door.
Is he a priest?
I'll let you decide. These first couple of sentences kind of sets the scene for what he probably was, but still, we'll leave it open for the folks at home. It says, I was a teenager living alone in an apartment in the middle of a terrible neighborhood. There were drug dealers, gangs, prostitutes, addicts, and crazy people everywhere, including next door. And that was during the day. I tried to be home and stay home at night. I wasn't defenseless or dumb. I had been homeless before managing to get this apartment, so I knew how to take care of myself. Still, being basically a kid, it was scary as hell for me at times. One night, I was up late playing Zelda, just kind of hanging out, when someone banged on my door. It was after midnight and all my lights were off. No one really knew that I lived there. I thought it was a wandering meth head. I peeked out the window, which overlooked my front door, the courtyard for the apartment building, and every single other front door. Every apartment was dark, and there was no one in front of my door. And yet, bang bang, more knocks, followed by a friendly male voice. Hey, can you let me in? I just want to hang out. Yeah, that's a no from me, boss. See you later. At this point, I was scared as hell. It took me a minute to build up the courage, but I peeked through the curtains again, this time being careful to look down near the bottom of the door in case someone was kneeling or even laying down. But there was no one there, and yet the knocks continued all night. Usually, he would sound friendly and ask me random things. Do you have kids? I have toys they can play with. And I have some food here if you're hungry. A few times the tone got a bit more sinister, saying things like, I know you're in there. And I don't know why you're making this so hard. I'm your friend. I didn't have a phone and didn't have anyone I could call anyway. except the cops who I deeply mistrusted. I could have snuck out the back window and made a run for it, but it was a bad neighborhood in the middle of the night. It seemed like the more dangerous option. And lastly, the man never actually tried to break in. All I could do was sit there all night listening to him talk and bang on the door, hoping he'd go away. I continued to peek out my front window and other windows in the apartment, but I never saw him. He eventually did go away as the sun began to rise, probably around 5 a.m. I spent several months in that apartment, and he never came back. But I never found out who or what he was.
He was the priest from Poltergeist.
Wow. You got kids, friend? I got some toys they can play with.
He's nice at first, and then he tells you you're all going to die.
Yeah.
If you don't let him in.
It's like, why are you making this so hard? Like, that's just creepy.
The other...
Even if it's not a ghost.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a ghost. Just the thought of a human being sitting outside your door and being like, hey, why are you making this so hard? I'm your friend. And you're just like, it is 3 a.m. I got Zelda playing right now.
Yeah.
You are not my friend.
The other teenagers don't make it this hard.
Wow. Took it to a weird place there for a moment, but we'll circle back.
I mean, obviously this thing is preying on unsuspecting young people in a dangerous neighborhood.
How many people, just how many people in their right mind would even open that door, though? Like, that guy's got to have a success rate of a goose egg. There is no way that has worked even one time.
Maybe if he just knocks.
If it's a child, if it's like a 4-year-old or something, like, hey, I'm a friend. You know,
some people still open the door without looking through and seeing. I mean, that's not typically me, but
yeah, that ain't me anymore, man. No, not after 6 years in Vegas and have my vehicle broken into in every single location I lived. That is not for me.
Yeah. I don't know, man. What do you think?
Part of me is just like, oh, I was a meth head.
But
the fact that he kept looking outside and could not see anyone is creepy, because in order for you to hear someone talking, they got to be right up against your door. So if you're looking out your window and you can see your door and you can see everyone else's door and you can see no one's out there, it just adds like a really, and I've heard stories of like haunted like motels and stuff like that, where, you know, people will stay in a specific room and they'll have this nightmare of like a death happening outside or someone getting beaten outside. And then they find out later while they're researching that like, oh, someone actually did get beat outside this room. And I was like living it through my dream when I stayed in that room. I've heard those stories before, but you would think if that was the case, that it would have happened more than once. You know, like it wouldn't have just been like a send off, like, hey, oh, you're not going to let me in? All right, deuces. I'll see you later. Maybe
it's only on the anniversary of the death during a harvest moon or some weird shit like that.
Yeah, so it's like once in a while. And they did mention they weren't there for too long. So like a few months or something like that. So yeah, I mean, that would make sense if it is some kind of like weird once a year or something on the anniversary of this guy actually getting inside the door. Maybe, who knows? I don't know. It was when I read that, I'm like, ugh. It sat wrong with me. I'm like, this is uncomfortable.
Maybe this guy just thought he was looking for his friendly black-eyed kids. Showed up the same way.
Also similar vibe, right? Similar, like, hey, let us in. But it's just one guy. He's like, I'm waiting for my counterpart here. They're running late. So anyway, let me in. I'm a friend. It's fine. Can I use your phone? I brought cookies, you know?
I would open the door.
You would.
Chocolate chip cookies, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. You're like, wait, cookies? Yeah, I'll let anyone for cookies.
Oatmeal, I'd want to know if their grandmother made it, because then it would probably still be good. But chocolate chip cookies, my weakness.
Yeah. Circling back around to the grandmothers, it's butterscotch chips inside oatmeal cookies that make oatmeal cookies better. Otherwise, oatmeal cookies, can we all just be honest? They're kind of garbage.
I've never had that.
That's how my mom used to make them. And she's a grandmother now. So, hey, maybe she got to bring that back around.
Yeah, I would like some cookies for Christmas.
She's coming back out. We can probably make that happen.
Nice.
Watch, she gets out here and she's like, I never made butterscotch oatmeal cookies. I'm like,
That was your other mother.
It was all a dream. Interesting.
You don't know what another other mother is, do you?
I've had friends that were brothers from another mother.
This is not quite the same. The other mother is from Coraline.
Wow. Yeah, I never watched it.
I think you'd like Coraline.
I think it seemed a little creepy with the button eyes and whatnot. So
it was very creepy, but one of my favorite stories.
That's fine. Speaking of your favorite stories, now that we're closing this out, what was your favorite story from today's episode, Christian?
You ask me that all the time, and now I have to
Well, it is part of the show.
Trying to get the Rolodex to move.
There's 3 stories. Shouldn't be too hard for you to grab onto one of them.
You would think so.
You're going to say the last one, aren't you?
No, I like the first one.
What was it about?
That's what I'm trying to remember, but I know I liked it.
Just say the middle one, the buried house.
The buried house, I like the idea of the buried house.
It's just a little too milquetoast for you, huh?
Yeah, there's nothing scary other than
something laying on the inside of a house that doesn't exist.
Could have been like a pile of sand, but this guy that tried hard later in the story to convince us he wasn't afraid was afraid.
He was indeed, and that is very evident. What was the first story? The first story. Oh, yes, the first story, of course, Christian. I didn't cut out a bunch of stuff. We were trying to remember what it was the haunted house and all the stories that the guy had from growing up in a haunted house, the drawings on the windows, all that stuff.
I'm going with the last story.
Wow. So brought it back to what I had originally said. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Wow,
I mean, the first story was fine, but it felt like I said, like the brother thing. I thought the brother could have left that mark because that's totally what a big brother would do.
Maybe the first mark, but every mark after that, you're kind of grasping, I think.
Maybe. But then what lost me on that first one was him not panicking when something's standing behind him.
That is an interesting choice, yeah.
That one,
yeah, that's a little, unless you're like frozen in fear. That's one thing where you just see it.
And that's possible, but he made it sound like
or he didn't want people to think that he was a little, little bitch. And so he was like, I definitely didn't freak out. I stared at it for 10 seconds.
The whole point of writing down your scary story and posting it online is that you were scared. Don't try to play it off, man.
That's true.
We've all been in those kind of situations, even if it's just our reflection where we just terrified the crap out of ourselves.
Yeah.
I told you that one where I'm walking down the hall. I've had this poster on the bathroom door for who knows how many years. And I looked right at it and basically almost jumped into the wall. I hadn't been drinking or anything. And it just like, for some reason, it just that night in the dark, it caught me off guard.
Gotcha.
I'll admit that. Obviously, this guy wouldn't. Man up.
Yeah. Man up.
You're supposed to cry when demons show up.
Wow. Getting off topic. Anyway. We hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Sleep with the Lights On. If you have not followed us on social media, it is at Freaky Deaky Pod, and you're going to want to do that. You're going to want to subscribe to the channel. We drop these every other Friday, and we've got so many more shows in the works that we're just kind of fleshing out. We got some fun plans for the YouTube channel, assuming that our lives don't just drop into complete and total chaos.
Or
we get a production team to come in here and start doing some of this work.
Oh, after the chaos thing, I was like, or
this
get
is
blown to ashes.
A low-key reference, I feel.
I was going to be
you're actually like, we're very interesting. Yeah. That demonetizes videos now, Christian. Way to go. Good thing we're not monetized.
I did not say WW.
Yeah, I actually did, but that's fine. I King speech. Anyway.
All of a sudden the algorithm's like, what the hell's he talking about?
Getting back to the algorithm, let's close this show out. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I mentioned, because not only do we drop these every other Friday, but we also drop a bonus story the following day. So if you enjoyed this, you're going to enjoy that. I can guarantee it. And that's going to be dropping tomorrow, the bonus story for this episode. And you're going to want to check it out. It's a doozy. In the meantime, if you have a story of your own that you'd like to have featured on Sleep with the Lights On, send it into the gang at thefreakydeaky.com or leave us up to 3-minute voicemail at 801-997-0051. And if we get enough of those in, we'll start playing those on the show. That'd be a fun way to close it out.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be super fun. So send in your stories, folks. We love the creepy. We love the spooky dooky phrasing. Really wish I wouldn't have said that.
Spooky dooky.
Spooky dooky. Sounds like, well, everyone knows what it sounds like. So I'm going to go ahead and end it right there. We'll see you next time. And remember, friends, sleep with the lights on because you never know.
I'm still stuck on the spooky dookie.
He's trying to buy time.
No, seriously. I've been like spooky dookie. It's just like all of a sudden, like I went to see them at the Wiltern last week.
Okay. So now that you got that out of your way.
Because you never know. Damn it. You got to remind me that.
What is lurking in the shadows, folks? We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Be scared